Our next speaker, speaking from GNLU Law University, is Karmanne Thadani, and he's speaking for the motion. Karmanne, go ahead.
Respected members of the August House, we've been having a very interesting debate so far. As I see it, it's becoming, I'm sorry to say, an NDA versus UPA match. That's not really the objective of this debate. But coming to the points raised by side opposition, their fundamental contention has been that there have been significant foreign policy successes India can boast of, the Indo-US nuclear deal being a significant example. Possibly, yes, point taken. There are many debates on the nuclear deal, whether or not it is required, whether or not it is in our best interests. But keeping that aside, if that is taken as a success, fair enough. Our problem, our contention is not that India has had no foreign policy successes. I agree with Mr. Manish Tiwari when he says that analysis of foreign policy cannot be a zero-sum game, wherein you say it's completely successful or a complete failure. But do we wish to see our successes only and celebrate them? Or do we wish to look at where we have failed and how to rectify our problems? As you pointed out, Mr. Goswami, very rightly, Mr. Manish Tiwari failed to mention how we will solve our problem of Chinese incursions, but only mentioned that we are cooperating with them in Copenhagen, we are cooperating with them in terms of trade, and we have to engage with China, which is now a lone power. Sir, it may be a lone power, but it is intruding into our territory. Sir, it may be a lone power, but it tells our INS Airawat warship, not a warship in fact, our ship off the coast of Vietnam to actually go off the South China Sea and claims the whole sea. We may be engaging with others, we may be trying to contain China. How far have we actually succeeded? Speaking of Pakistan, again, as Tahemi pointed out, even the NDA government is responsible. I have a report, a media report, and also a think tank report, which says that 43 intelligence reports were produced between June 1998 and May 1999, saying that there will be a possible intrusion from Pakistan. Now, why did the Kargil war have to take place in the first place? Why could that not be prevented? It's fine to have a bus diplomacy with Pakistan, it's fine to have cultural exchanges, but why cannot we be strong enough? Why can we not be strong enough? Why can we not take a firm stand? Why do we still cooperate with them in trade? Why do we still talk to them? We suspend talks and we talk again. What purpose does that really serve? If we can't be tough on terror, why are we doing this to ourselves? So I am not an expert, as some people present here are. I speak for the youth. I speak for how we feel. That's all I can claim to do. Well, so that's how we feel. We feel that we do not understand why Ms. Mamata Banerjee's contentions vis-a-vis Bangladesh should actually be taken into consideration by the central government and put India's geostrategic interests at stake. So these are the questions that we have, and we want answers. Thank you.
Let's give the young man a round of applause. Well argued, Karmanne. And you know, if you study Indo-Pakistan relations, you will find this from Havana to Sharm el-Sheikh to Thimphu. Every time there's a grave provocation, there's a lot of anger, there are a few statements, then that subsides, talks resume like nothing ever happened. That's a fact, and I'm glad you're steering the debate in that direction. Now, taking you on from the other side, I think, is Rejul from IIIT Bangalore speaking against the motion. Rejul, floor is yours for 3 minutes.
First, I'd like to respond to a point that Thami made earlier. See, according to you, one of our global aspirations is apparently to protect our diaspora everywhere. Now, I mean, come on, this is a bit of a utopian ideal, right? It's easy to say that, yeah, our country should be able to protect its citizens everywhere. But can we even protect every Indian citizen on our own soil? Forget in other countries. See, let's be realistic here. It's important for us to improve our economic power. It's important for us to improve militarily. But you can't say protection of every Indian citizen everywhere in the world is a benchmark by which you're going to judge our foreign policy. Second of all, responding to both Karmania and Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, you all have talked of Pakistan and how we have talks and then break off talks and stuff. And yeah, everybody's sick and tired of it, so am I. But the point is, really, this is just a lot of hot air. I mean, what are we going to do? What do you really want us to do? You want us to declare war on Pakistan? It's absurd. Okay? None of us want another Kargil. Second of all, what exactly is your stand going to be? It's not necessary that everybody in Pakistan is evil. We've made a bogeyman out of Pakistan.
Everyone is evil.
So what is your attitude? There might be rogue elements in the Pakistani government. There might be elements on the LOC right now. What are we doing? There are elements which might be attacking us and attacking the Indian army. But you can't break off talks with the government for that reason. You can't just say that I'm going to break off every diplomatic relation with this country, have no talks, have no trade or something like that with it. It's absurd. Second of all, if you're talking of the economy and what we've done for our economy, yes, our economy has slowed down, but that's not exactly a foreign policy question. Firstly, it's in part due to the global recession, which is not something we have control over. Second of all, we have taken a lot of steps to try and speed up the economy, and that's something that should be factored in. Militarily speaking, we've collaborated with Russia on the BrahMos missile tech. We've now promised to collaborate with America on the next-gen Javelin missiles, as was mentioned earlier. And this is the first time we have a defense agreement wherein they're supplying us with technology as well. This will give us an option to reverse engineer and try to manufacture the arms ourselves. Next up, when we're talking of soft power, you mentioned earlier how Africa is already being invaded by China, so to speak, through this economic route. I don't think that's a reason why India shouldn't also pursue it. Firstly, China is focusing more on resource extraction. India is also focused on a lot of infrastructure projects and has tried to promote development in Africa. This will also provide a market for our goods. Second of all, when you're talking of how we have to accept the fact that we are forced to compete with China, I completely agree with you. This debate is about foreign policy, and in foreign policy, you have to accept certain constraints. You have to accept that right now, China's economy is bigger than ours. That doesn't mean that we are necessarily a weaker country than China. For example, even America admits that our Navy is on par with NATO standards, and our Navy is in fact stronger than China, which is something we should monopolize on. But it is important to realize that even if there are some respects in which we cannot compete with China, there are others in which we can and in which we should, moreover. Also, you raised the point about Mamata Banerjee and how domestic compulsions sometimes force our hand in foreign policy, so to speak. I completely agree with you. I think that the center is the sole one who should have a say in foreign policy. However, remember this, we're a democracy. And though it's true that we do have to allow Mamata Banerjee sometimes for some strange reasons, even people like her, to force our hand on issues like Bangladesh, it's also the very same democracy that allows us both to sit here and criticize that on this forum. Okay. And I think that's a very important step. And I think that's a very precious thing. Otherwise, we'd just be another China.
I'm glad we are coming to that area because if we are talking about that, we'll also have to talk about India's vote at the UN for a watered-down resolution. These are important areas. Should domestic politics at all interfere in determining foreign policy? Have we made a mistake there? Is it happening because the government is weak? Is it happening because of politics? Or is it happening because of individual conviction? We'll get to those areas. They are important. Dr. Brahma Chelani is our next speaker, and he's speaking for the motion of our foreign policy not being in line with our global aspirations. Dr. Chelani.
Mr. Chairpersons, let me begin with a simple fact. India represents 1/6 of the human race, yet it punches far below its weight. By comparison, small South Korea, tiny Israel, and city-state Singapore punch far above their weight. Internationally, India is a rule taker, not a rule maker. Instead of presenting itself as a great power, a world power in the making, India tends to present itself as a subcontinental power with great power ambitions. A recent essay in the leading American journal, Foreign Affairs, aptly summed up how India is its own worst enemy. Under the title, India's Feeble Foreign Policy, the essay described how India is resisting its own rise. One of the reasons why India's foreign policy is out of sync with its global aspirations, with its potential, and with its capabilities is the huge age gap between the leadership and the bulk of the population. If you look at the average age of an Indian political leader and the average age of an Indian citizen, the gap is one of the widest in the world. So Indian foreign policy is not only out of sync with India's global aspirations, it is also out of sync with India. And this is an unfortunate reality. In fact, because of being overly diffident and overly reactive in the absence of a larger strategic blueprint, India's foreign policy is retarding the advance of India's core interests. Now, if you look at the bigger picture globally, the gap in the stature between China and India has grown enormously over the last 50 years, where we were in the 1950s and where we stand today. So the structural limitations of India's foreign policy, as Mr. Thadani, my young friend, very rightly pointed out, those predate the formation of the UPA government. This is not a UPA versus NDA debate, but a larger debate on the structural weaknesses of India's foreign policy and how do we correct those weaknesses. But I think the biggest concern that we should have that regionally, India's space has been shrinking in its own backyard. Our only ally today, literally, is tiny Bhutan.